It was still dark when the pounding began. At first, I thought I was dreaming the heavy thud of fists against wood echoing through the hallway like a heartbeat too loud for the hour. My phone screen glowed 5:03 a.m. I threw off the blanket, every sound in the house suddenly louder: the hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the wall clock, the faint rustle of wind through the porch railing. No one visits at 5 in the morning unless something is terribly wrong. I slipped my feet into slippers and reached for my robe, still half asleep but already tense. The knocking came again, faster, now urgent. I hurried to the door, every instinct screaming both to open and not to open it. When I finally turned the lock, a gust of cold air hit me, carrying the scent of rain and asphalt. And standing there on the porch was my daughter, Ava, 14. Her hair was tangled, her hoodie unzipped, pajama pants soaked at the hem as if she'd run through wet grass. She was trembling not from cold, but from fear. Her face was pale, eyes wide and glassy under the dim porch light. "Mom," she whispered, breathless, "don't go to work today. Please, just trust me." Her words were sharp and unreal, slicing through the stillness like glass. My throat went dry. "Ava, what are you doing out here? It's 5 in the morning." She shook her head quickly, glancing over her shoulder as if someone might be standing behind her. The street was empty, but her fear was contagious. "You can't go," she said again. Her voice cracked on the last word. "Promise me, Mom. Please." I stepped closer, trying to wrap my arms around her, but she flinched just for a second, as though touch itself might break the fragile moment. I could feel her heart racing against her ribs. "Talk to me, honey," I said, my voice trembling despite my effort to sound calm. "Did you have a nightmare? What happened?" Ava's lips parted, but no sound came out. She looked past me into the house, eyes darting toward the staircase, the hallway, the dark corners where nothing moved. Then she leaned closer, whispering so quietly I almost didn't catch it. "They're watching." I froze. "Who's watching?" But she didn't answer. She just grabbed my hand, squeezed it so tightly my fingers went numb, then let go. "Just stay home," she said, almost pleading now. "If you go, something bad will happen." Before I could speak again, she pulled away and ran inside. Her bare feet slapped against the hardwood floor as she disappeared up the stairs. I stood at the doorway, stunned, the porch light flickering above me. The air smelled like electricity before a storm. I turned my head toward the empty street. Every window of every house was dark, the whole neighborhood asleep. Only ours was awake, holding its breath. The ticking of the kitchen clock grew louder, echoing in the back of my skull. I looked at the road once more and thought I saw movement, a shadow tall and still standing by the corner under the street lamp. But when I blinked, it was gone. My pulse pounded in my ears. I shut the door, turned the lock, and pressed my back against it, trying to convince myself it was nothing. Just a nightmare Ava carried into waking. Just a mother's nerves spinning stories in the dark. Yet as I climbed the stairs toward her room, something inside me whispered that she was right. That morning would not be ordinary. Not for me, not for her, not for anyone who carried the name Brooks. My name is Lena Brooks. I am 38 years old, a data manager for Argentech Laboratories, and until that morning, I believed my life was under control. I have built everything on order, on schedules, rules, and routine. Wake at 6, drive Ava to school, coffee at my desk by 8:15, home by 6 dinner dishes, a book before bed. Order kept grief quiet. Order kept me from falling apart after Mark died. My husband has been gone for 3 years. They said it was a lab accident, an equipment failure in one of Argentech's prototype facilities. No one ever explained what exactly exploded. No one gave me the truth, but the company paid his insurance quickly, sent flowers, and told me not to blame myself. I learned to stop asking questions. I learned to survive for my daughter. Ava is my world. She's 14, bright, imaginative, a little too observant for her own good. She sees things in people that I miss. She draws constantly, faces, windows, scenes from dreams she won't describe. Sometimes I find her sketchbook full of laboratories and strange shapes, all surrounded by light. When I ask, she says it's just Dad's place how I remember it. This morning, though, she hadn't drawn. She hadn't even turned on the light in her room. She sat curled on the bed, hugging her knees, eyes fixed on the rain-streaked window. "Ava," I said softly, stepping into her room. "Honey, what happened? Why did you come downstairs like that?" She didn't look at me. "You believe me, right, about what?" "That you shouldn't go today." There was something in her tone that made me sit beside her. "Was it a dream?" I asked. "Did you see something?" "It wasn't a dream," she said quietly. "I woke up and just knew." I wanted to believe her, but logic stood in the way like a locked door. I brushed a strand of hair from her face and forced a smile. "Sweetheart, maybe you're anxious because of my work. You know Mom's job can be stressful." Her eyes finally met mine. "No, Mom. It's not that. It's them." "Who's them?" She didn't answer, only whispered, "You'll understand later." I sighed, stood, and told her to get some rest, but as I reached the door, she said something that made me pause. "Dad used to say they'd come back for you." The words struck like a shard of ice. "Ava, what did you just say?" She blinked as if she hadn't meant to speak at all. "I don't know. It just came out." My throat tightened. I remembered nights when Mark would come home late, smelling of metal and ozone, and tell me not to worry if strange cars appeared on our street. Back then, I thought it was paranoia from overwork. Now I wasn't sure. I looked at Ava, wanting to ask more, but she was staring out the window again. I left her room, went to the kitchen, and stood by the counter in silence. My phone buzzed with unread emails. The clock read 7:02 a.m. The sky outside was turning gray-blue. I typed a message to my supervisor, "Personal emergency. I won't be in today." My finger hovered over send. For years, I'd never missed a single day of work unless I was sick. I told myself I was doing this for Ava. I hit send. The decision felt heavier than it should have, as though I'd just chosen a path that couldn't be undone. The house was quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the faint rhythmic drip from the roof. I made coffee, but it tasted bitter metallic. I poured it down the sink. As I turned off the light, I caught a glimpse of the reflection in the window, my own tired face, and for a fraction of a second, something else behind me, a faint shimmer like movement in the air. I spun around. Nothing. I told myself it was just light, just grief, just imagination. But when I looked back at the phone, another thought crept in. Maybe Ava hadn't saved me from a nightmare. Maybe she'd saved me from the truth I was never supposed to see. The house felt wrong that morning, like the air itself was waiting for something to happen. I stood in the kitchen, hands wrapped around a mug of coffee that had already gone cold, listening to the steady rhythm of rain against the window. Ava was still upstairs, silent. Usually by now, she would be humming to herself, feeding the cat, asking me if she could bring lunch to school instead of eating cafeteria food. Today, there was nothing but quiet. I tried to shake the unease by cleaning. Dishes, countertops, anything to fill the silence. But every sound seemed amplified: the scrape of porcelain, the faint hum of the fridge, the creak of old floorboards. It felt like living inside a shell, and every sound was the sea pressing in. Around 8:30, I went to draw the curtains in the living room. That was when I noticed it. A silver van parked across the street, plain clean without license plates. It hadn't been there last night. I stood perfectly still, staring through the narrow slit between the curtains. The windshield was tinted black. I couldn't see inside. After a minute, I told myself it belonged to a contractor or delivery service. Still, I couldn't pull my eyes away. My phone vibrated on the counter, startling me. I looked down, expecting my boss or maybe a message from Ava's school, but there was nothing. No notification, no missed call. Just the faint afterbuzz that left a phantom tremor in my hand. I locked the screen. The clock read 9:12. The rest of the morning passed in slow motion. I answered emails, double-checked data reports, anything to pretend life was normal. At 10:00, I looked outside again. The van was still there. The driver's seat was empty now. Or maybe it wasn't. I couldn't tell. A nervous laugh escaped me as I forced myself away from the window. That was when the doorbell rang. The sound sliced through the quiet like a blade. Once. Twice. Then silence. My heart stumbled. For a moment, I didn't move. The doorbell rang again, longer this time, insistent. I walked toward the foyer, every step deliberate. "Who is it?" My voice echoed faintly. No answer. I reached for the handle but stopped when I saw the envelope. A white envelope slid halfway under the door edges, damp from the rain. No name, no return address. I hesitated before picking it up. Inside was a single folded sheet of paper typed in bold black letters, "Do not show up." That was all. 3 words centered on the page, no signature, no explanation. The words stared back at me like a command I was already following. I stood frozen, staring at the paper, until a sound behind me made me jump. Ava was on the stairs, her hair still messy from sleep eyes wide. "Who was it?" she asked. No one, I lied, quickly sliding the paper behind my back. "Go back upstairs, honey." But she didn't move. Her eyes were fixed on the window by the door. "Mom," she said softly, "is Dad back?" The question hit like static in the air. I opened my mouth but couldn't speak. "Why do you ask that?" She frowned, pressing her forehead against the glass. "Because I thought I saw someone outside." He looked like Dad. My pulse pounded in my throat. I reached for her hand, gently pulling her away from the window. "It's just the rain," I said, forcing calm into my voice. "No one's out there." But I didn't look again. I couldn't. The envelope was still in my hand, its warning heavy as stone. I told myself it was a coincidence. I told myself I didn't believe in ghosts. But part of me knew someone wanted me afraid, and it was working. By late morning, the rain had stopped, leaving a stillness that felt heavier than the storm. I tried to keep busy laundry emails, anything but my focus, scattered every few minutes. The clock above the stove read 11:37 when the phone rang. The sound made me flinch. Unknown number. My first instinct was to let it ring, but something in my gut told me to answer. I swiped the screen. "Hello, silence." Then a man's voice, calm and professional. "Mrs. Brooks, this is Detective Hall with the County Police Department. Is this Lena Brooks?" My chest tightened. "Yes." "What's going on?" "Ma'am, are you aware of an incident that occurred this morning at your workplace, Argentec?" I asked, already feeling my stomach twist. "Yes, ma'am. There was an explosion in the East Research Wing around 8:10 this morning." The room spun slightly. "Oh my God, was anyone hurt?" The detective hesitated. "Several injuries, some fatalities. The situation's still developing." I pressed a hand to the counter to steady myself. My mind jumped to my co-workers Ellen in analytics, Ben in systems, faces flashing through my memory like cards. I wasn't there," I said. "I stayed home today. Are you certain?" His tone shifted, less empathy, more formality. "Yes, of course. I've been home with my daughter since early morning." "Why?" "Because your access badge was used at 8:02 a.m. Security footage shows your vehicle entering the garage shortly after." My heart dropped. "That's impossible. My car is in the driveway." I rushed to the window, pulling the curtain aside. There it was, parked where I always left it. The sight didn't calm me. It made everything worse. "I haven't left the house," I said, voice shaking. "Someone must have—" I stopped. My throat closed around the words. "Mrs. Brooks," the detective continued, "can anyone verify your location this morning?" My eyes darted to the stairs. Ava's door was shut. "My daughter," I said quickly. "She's here. She saw me." "How old is your daughter? 14, anyone else?" "No." He paused, and I could hear faint typing in the background. "Ma'am, we're trying to locate all employees for questioning. We'll need you to remain at home until a unit arrives." Something in his tone wasn't right. It wasn't reassurance, it was procedure. Am I under investigation?" I asked. "Not at this time," he said, but there was a pause between the words. "Do not leave your property. Officers will be there shortly." The line went dead before I could reply. I stood in silence, the phone still pressed to my ear. The world outside looked unchanged. Gray sky, slick pavement, the same silver van now parked closer to my house. A bird landed on the hood, then flew away when the driver's side door opened just a crack. I couldn't see the face inside, just a sliver of movement. My hands trembled as I set the phone down. A thought came, uninvited and unwelcome. What if the police weren't coming to protect me? What if they were coming to take me? I ran upstairs. Ava was sitting cross-legged on her bed, drawing. Her eyes lifted as I entered. Mom, what's wrong? Did you see anything outside? I asked, my voice too sharp. She blinked. No. Why? Because the police just called. They said something happened at my work. She frowned. You didn't go right, no? But they think I did. Her pencil froze mid-stroke. Mom, she whispered, you have to listen to me. This isn't just about work. The air in the room seemed to fold in on itself. What do you mean I don't know exactly? She said, voice shaking, but when I woke up, I heard Dad's voice. He said, keep her home. I felt the world tilt beneath me. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. Ava, I said quietly. What did you just say? She stared at me, terrified of her own words. He told me not to let you go. Downstairs, the phone rang again. This time I didn't move to answer. The second time someone knocked, it wasn't frantic like Ava's pounding at dawn. It was slow, controlled. 3 sharp raps that made the air vibrate through the doorframe. Ava and I both froze. I glanced at the clock, 11:58 a.m. The timing twisted something in my gut. The detective had said a unit would arrive shortly. Maybe this was them, maybe not. I motioned for Ava to stay put and walked down the stairs, every creak of wood sounding like thunder in the quiet house. Mrs. Brooks, a voice called from outside. A man's voice, this time calm official, just like the one on the phone. County Police, we need to ask you a few questions about this morning. Relief warred with unease. I peered through the peephole. A tall man in a dark uniform stood on the porch, but his badge hung from the wrong side of his chest. No cruiser on the curb, no radio static, just that silent silver van still idling a few houses down. Behind me, Ava whispered, "Don't open it." Her voice was tiny but steady. "Mom, something's wrong." The man knocked again, harder now. "Mrs. Brooks, we know you're inside. Please open the door." His tone was no longer polite. It was a command. I backed away, heart pounding. Ava tugged on my sleeve. "He's not real police." "How do you know?" "His belt," she said, pointing. Dad used to say real officers never carry their holster that high. It slows them down. I looked again. She was right. The holster sat awkwardly beneath the man's jacket like part of a costume. The doorknob rattled. "Ma'am, we just need a moment of your time." I stepped back farther. "Please show me your ID through the window." He didn't. Instead, he smiled a small, deliberate smile that never reached his eyes and said, "You shouldn't have stayed home." Something inside me broke loose then. Instinct overrode reason. I grabbed Ava's wrist and pulled her toward the kitchen. "Upstairs closet now." We ran footsteps hammering against the hardwood. Behind us came another sound, a low metallic scrape, the unmistakable whine of a lockpick twisting inside the front door. Ava gasped. "Mom, go!" I hissed. I shoved her into the hall closet and pressed a finger to my lips. The door swung shut behind her. I crouched beside it, holding my breath. The front door opened with a quiet click. For a few seconds, there was only the soft thud of boots on the entryway rug. Then a second voice, a woman's, spoke low and clipped. "Clear the living room. She's here somewhere." I counted 2 sets of footsteps moving through the house. They didn't speak again. Just the rhythmic search floorboards creaking drawers, sliding open glass breaking. I reached for my phone, hands trembling, and dialed 911. The screen flashed, "Call failed," no signal. From inside the closet came the faintest whisper. "Mom." I pressed my palm to the door to quiet her, praying they hadn't heard. The footsteps moved to the back of the house. A man cursed under his breath. "Nothing here." A pause. Then the woman said, "Check the upstairs. She might have hidden the data." The word data snapped through me like an electric current. They weren't burglars. They knew exactly who I was and what I worked on. When their footsteps reached the stairs, I cracked the closet door open and pulled Ava out. "Window," I mouthed. We slipped into the narrow laundry room, opened the small window above the dryer, and crawled through one at a time. Rain-soaked air hit my face as we dropped onto the wet grass below. From inside, a shout. "Movement, she's out." We ran, barefoot, breathless, cutting across our neighbor's yard. The silver van's engine roared to life. Tires screeched. Ava stumbled, and I caught her by the arm. "Keep going." The van lurched forward, headlights slicing through the drizzle. I dragged her toward the back gate. She cried out as her foot hit a rock, but she didn't stop running. Behind us, a voice shouted through a loudspeaker, "Lena Brooks, stop immediately." I didn't. I couldn't. I only knew that if I stopped, we'd vanish like Mark did, swallowed by silence and lies. We didn't stop running until the houses disappeared behind us and the trees swallowed the road. My lungs burned. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might shatter my ribs. Ava clung to my hand, stumbling but refusing to slow down. When we finally reached the edge of an old service road leading into the woods, I pulled her behind a fallen log and crouched down, gasping for air. The van's headlights swept across the distant tree line, searching, then disappeared. For a long moment, we sat in silence, listening to the wind push through the leaves. Mom Ava whispered they were inside the house. "I know," I said, my voice breaking. "I know, sweetheart. They weren't cops. No, they weren't." She hugged her knees, shivering despite the warm air. "They said something. When they were in the living room, one of them said, 'She's not supposed to be awake yet.'" "What does that mean?" The words made my blood run cold. "You heard that." She nodded. "They were talking like I wasn't there. Like you weren't supposed to know something." I stared into the dark, replaying every strange thing from the last few months: Mark's old colleagues calling to check in emails with encrypted attachments, the company memos about data redundancy, and the warnings Mark gave me before he died. "If anyone ever asks about Project Helix, tell them you don't know a thing." I had thought it was the rambling of a tired scientist. Now I wasn't so sure. I turned to Ava. "You said earlier you saw someone outside. A man. When was that?" "Last night," she said quietly. "Around 3. I woke up because I heard tapping on the window. I thought it was rain, but when I looked out, there was a man standing in the yard by the trees. He was wearing Dad's old lab coat." My stomach dropped. "That's not possible." "I know," she said quickly, "but he looked like Dad. Same height, same hair. He even stood the way he used to, with his head tilted a little." I wanted to go outside, but then he turned toward the house, and I saw his eyes. They glowed. "Mom, like glass catching light." A reflection, I said automatically, trying to calm her, trying to calm myself. "No," she insisted, shaking her head. It was like they weren't real eyes, like cameras. I didn't answer. There was no logic left to lean on. Ava reached into her hoodie pocket and pulled out her phone. I took a picture. She showed me the screen. The image was grainy, taken through her bedroom window, but there he was, a figure in white, standing near the edge of our yard. The face was a blur, but the outline was unmistakable. And next to him, barely visible, a metallic object glinted in the dark. I zoomed in. It wasn't a phone. It was a small, handheld scanner, the same kind I'd seen in Mark's lab years ago. "You said he was talking on the phone," I murmured. "He wasn't," she said. "He was talking into that thing." "I heard him say your name." I closed my eyes. My thoughts spun out in every direction. Mark had warned me once that Argentech had begun using field scanners to track data signatures tied to genetic sequences. Each device could identify specific DNA patterns within range. If that was true, and if someone had used it outside our house, they hadn't been looking for me. They'd been confirming me. "Mom," Ava whispered, tugging on my sleeve. "What's happening?" I looked at her, the freckles across her nose, the tear stains drying on her cheeks. The child who had just saved me from something I didn't yet understand. "I don't know," I said softly. "But I think your father tried to warn us. You mean, before he died, maybe even before that." I pulled my phone from my pocket, scrolling through old messages Mark had sent me months before the accident. Most were routine reminders, short notes, but one stood out dated 3 days before his death. It read, "If something happens, look for B12. Don't let them touch the source. B12. A project code. I remembered seeing it on documents once, quickly redacted when I asked about it. "Mom." Ava's voice trembled. "Why are they after us?" I looked at her and decided she deserved the truth, or at least as much of it as I could give. "Because your father worked on something they don't want the world to know. Something to do with DNA, and I think he used ours to build it." Her eyes widened. "You mean, we're part of it? I don't know yet, but they think we are." We both turned as the distant hum of an engine echoed through the woods again. The van's headlights swept across the trees like searching eyes. I grabbed Ava's hand. "We need to move." She looked up at me, fear and determination tangled in her expression. "Where?" "To your father's workshop," I said. "If there's any truth left, it's there." I stood pulling her up with me. The forest stretched ahead, wet and endless. Behind us, the road flickered with light. As we ran, I could hear my heartbeat keeping pace with the pounding of Ava's steps. Every sound, every breath felt like the start of something we couldn't turn back from. We ran until my legs burned and my lungs screamed for air. The woods blurred past us, branches clawing at our sleeves, the sound of the van fading behind. When we finally stopped, we were crouched behind an old fence line at the edge of a fallow field. Ava clung to my arm, shaking. "Where are we going?" she gasped. "To your father's workshop," I said, though part of me wasn't sure why that was the first place that came to mind. Maybe because it was the last piece of him still untouched by Argentech. Maybe because I needed somewhere to start believing he'd left us more than a mystery. The workshop sat 6 miles north near an abandoned farm road hidden behind a row of dead pines. We'd driven there once a year to keep it clean. I'd told Ava it was just for storage, but she'd always sensed there was more. Now it felt like the only place left to run. We cut through the field, the wet soil sticking to our shoes. My phone buzzed again, unknown number. I silenced it. A message popped up seconds later, Lena Brooks. "Stop running. No signature. No timestamp, just the words." I turned the phone off completely and stuffed it into my pocket. Ava looked at me. "Who's texting you?" "No one," I said. "Just junk." She didn't believe me. "Mom, they know where we are, don't they?" Her voice cracked and I wanted to lie, but I couldn't. "Maybe. But we'll be gone before they get close." We walked for another mile before we found an old pickup parked under the trees, a rusted relic Mark had left near a hunting trail years ago. I prayed the key was still hidden where he'd always kept it. I reached under the driver's seat, felt the cool metal touch my fingers, and exhaled a laugh that almost sounded like relief. The engine coughed twice before roaring to life. As we pulled onto the back road, Ava sat quietly beside me, staring at her hands. "Mom," she said after a long while. "You believe me now, don't you?" I looked at her, really looked. The small cut on her chin, the mud on her knees, the wide, intelligent fear in her eyes. She wasn't imagining things. She'd been right from the moment she knocked on my door. "Yes," I said softly. "I do." The trees thinned, giving way to rolling land and the faint outline of the hills. My mind churned, trying to piece together what was happening. Argentech had been developing genetic security systems technology that could identify individuals based on microscopic biological signatures. If Mark had been involved, if he'd used our DNA as templates for something proprietary, then maybe... Ava touched my arm. "What if Dad didn't die?" I gripped the steering wheel. "Sweetheart, I mean, what if that wasn't just an accident? What if they made it look that way because he found something out?" The question hit harder than she knew. Mark's death had always felt too clean, too efficient. They'd called it an electrical malfunction. No remains, no investigation. Just ashes from contaminated materials and a sealed death certificate. I blinked back the memories. We'll find out soon. The road narrowed gravel crunching beneath the tires. The workshop appeared ahead, a squat concrete building half swallowed by weeds, its windows boarded the metal door still padlocked. I parked behind it and killed the engine. For a moment, we just sat there listening to the ticking of the cooling engine, the sound of birds somewhere far away. Ava looked at me. "Do you think he left us something?" "I think he left us everything." As we climbed out, the wind carried the faint hum of something electric, distant but rising. Not thunder machines. Helicopters, maybe. I glanced up at the dull gray sky, heart pounding again. Inside, I said quickly, "Now." Ava hesitated only a second before following. I unlocked the padlock with the spare key Mark had given me years ago, the one I'd never thrown away, though I couldn't say why. The door groaned open. Inside, dust danced in thin beams of light. The smell of metal oil and old paper filled the air. Ava stepped in first, her voice barely above a whisper. "It feels like he never left." I closed the door behind us, sliding the bolt into place. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying the faint echo of engines. They were closer now, much closer. The workshop smelled like time had stopped the moment Mark died. Dust lay thick over the workbenches, coils of wire tangled beside old lab notes, a cracked mug still half full of petrified coffee. Ava ran her fingers over a stack of photo slides, leaving small trails through the dust. Her voice was quiet, reverent. He really worked here. Yes, I said, scanning the room. Every weekend. Said it helped him think. I didn't tell her that I'd stopped coming after the funeral because the silence in this place felt too full of ghosts. The far wall was lined with metal cabinets, most locked one half open. I went straight to the old steel drawer near the center bench, the one Mark had told me not to touch. When I yanked it open, something inside clattered. A flash drive, 2 black notebooks, and an envelope with my name written in his handwriting. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper folded twice. Lena, if you're reading this, they've come for what I found. Don't trust anyone from Argentech, especially the ones who claim they can protect you. Keep Ava safe. The truth is buried in Project Helix. They called it synthetic immunity, but it was never synthetic. It was inherited. I stared at the words until they blurred. My vision swam. He'd written this before the accident. Ava's voice trembled. Mom, what's Project Helix? I swallowed hard. Something your father was working on. Something that got him killed. She leaned closer, eyes wide with fear. Why would they hurt Dad? He was helping them, right? I didn't know how to answer, so I didn't. Instead, I plugged the flash drive into an old laptop on the counter. The screen flickered, then came to life, humming softly. The folder labeled Helix Archive opened by itself. Inside were dozens of files, but one stood out a video titled Mark Brooks, Final Record. I double-clicked. Mark's face appeared tired and hollow-eyed, filmed in this very room. His voice was steady, almost resigned. If you're watching this, Lena, then I'm gone. They'll tell you it was an accident. It wasn't. Argentech isn't developing cures. They're designing control. They discovered a natural gene, something immune regenerative, and instead of studying it, they replicated it. You and Ava, you carry that gene. Ava gasped. I reached for her hand. Listen to me, I said, but I didn't even know what I wanted her to hear. Mark continued. They tested synthetic versions on volunteers. Every trial failed. The cells rejected the artificial strand. But your blood, Lena, it accepted the modification naturally. They realized what that meant. You weren't a subject. You were the source. They've been tracking us ever since. The video glitched, flickered. Then he looked directly into the camera, his eyes sharp even through the static. If anything happens to me, take Ava to the vault. You'll find the key where it all began. The screen went black. Ava turned toward me slowly. Mom, she whispered, he said we're the source. I nodded, tears burning the corners of my eyes. I don't understand how, but yes. She took a step back, hugging herself. Does that mean they want me too? Yes, I said, my voice breaking. Especially you. The laptop beeped suddenly. A new message appeared, one that hadn't been there before. Access detected. Tracking initiated. I slammed the lid shut. We have to move. But the vault, what did he mean? I grabbed the flash drive and notebooks, shoving them into my bag. Your father once told me about a storage facility, a secure lab in the hills. He said if anything ever happened, that's where the truth would be. Ava wiped her eyes. So we go there. Yes, before they find us. She hesitated, then looked toward the window. Mom. What? She pointed. Through the cracks of the boarded slats, a faint light moved between the trees, blue and white flashes sweeping side to side. Searchlights. They're here, she whispered. My pulse spiked. I doused the small desk lamp, plunging the room into shadow. The air hummed with the sound of engines overhead. I grabbed Ava's hand. Back door now. We pushed through the rear exit into the damp field behind the workshop. The lights grew brighter closer. A helicopter thudded above the tree line. I could hear muffled voices over a loudspeaker too distorted to make out, but one word repeated again and again, asset. We ran across the field mud splashing beneath our shoes. My mind kept replaying Mark's voice. You weren't a subject. You were the source. Ava stumbled and I pulled her upright. Don't look back, I said, though I couldn't help glancing myself. Through the haze, I saw men in dark uniforms spilling out of the van, their weapons drawn. They moved like they already knew exactly where we were heading. The world felt smaller with every step. The air itself seemed to close around us. Somewhere ahead beyond the field, a dirt road shimmered faintly in the last light of afternoon. It led north, toward the hills, toward the vault, toward whatever truth my husband had died to protect. "Mom!" Ava panted beside me. "What if we don't make it?" I tightened my grip on her hand. "Then they'll have to kill me before they touch you." We ran harder. The sound of engines roared behind us, but for the first time that day, I felt something fierce ignite inside me, no longer fear, but resolve. Because Mark's death had stolen my peace. But if what he'd said was true, his discovery had given us something else. Purpose. We barely reached the tree line before the first shot shattered the silence. It wasn't aimed at us. Just a warning, a sound that ripped the air apart and made the birds explode from the branches. Ava gasped, covering her ears, and I dragged her deeper into the woods. The mud clung to our shoes. Roots snagged our ankles, and the thump of boots grew closer. Whoever they were, they moved like a unit, methodical, trained. We slipped down a slope and landed behind an overgrown drainage ditch. I pulled Ava against me and waited, listening. Through the trees, flashlights cut arcs through the darkness. A voice crackled through a radio. Visual on the vehicle. "No hostiles inside. Proceed to secondary target." Another voice answered lower, colder. "The asset is with the Offspring. Protocol B12 is active. Secure and extract." Offspring. They meant Ava. I felt her tremble against me. "Mom, they're talking about us." "I know," I whispered. "Stay quiet." The lights swept past too close and then faded. I dared to breathe. Somewhere to our left, a branch snapped. Someone was moving alone, separate from the main group. A scout. I reached into my bag, searching for anything useful. My fingers brushed against one of Mark's notebooks, its metal binding biting into my palm. I remembered his words from the video, "You'll find the key where it all began." That phrase kept repeating in my head louder than the pounding of my pulse. Ava tugged at my sleeve. "Mom, we can't just keep running. They'll catch us." "I know," I said, forcing myself to think. "We need to make them lose our trail." I looked around, spotted an old irrigation channel leading toward the creek. Water. It'll hide our scent. We crawled toward it, keeping low. The air smelled like wet leaves and gasoline from the van's exhaust. I helped Ava down the small embankment until our feet hit the shallow stream. The cold shocked through my skin. We followed the current, walking downstream in the water for what felt like forever. When we reached a bend where the creek widened into a small pond, I stopped to catch my breath. My hands shook so hard I nearly dropped the flashlight. "Mom," Ava whispered. "They said B12. You said Dad mentioned that before he died." "Yeah. So, what is it?" I looked at her, unsure how much truth to give. "It's a project code. Genetic testing. Your father thought they found something in our DNA, a natural mutation they couldn't reproduce synthetically. That's why they called it B12. You and I, we were part of it without knowing." Her eyes filled with tears. "So they're not after what Dad built. They're after us." Before I could answer, another sound cut through the forest, an engine closer now. The beam of a flashlight struck the trees ahead of us, and a man stepped into view. He wore the same dark uniform as the ones before, but his face was uncovered. He looked young, early 30s, eyes flat and focused. He raised a hand. "Mrs. Brooks," he said, voice steady. "Please don't run, we're not here to hurt you." Ava pressed herself behind me. I raised my chin, then put the gun down. He hesitated. "You don't understand. Your husband's work project Helix wasn't what you think. He stole something, a prototype sequence. We're here to contain it." "Contain," I repeated. "You mean destroy it?" He lowered his weapon slightly. "It's unstable. If the data leaks, it could expose things bigger than you can imagine. Please, Mrs. Brooks, come with us. We'll keep you and your daughter safe." I laughed, a sharp, hollow sound. "That's what they told Mark before he died, isn't it?" For the first time, his expression flickered. "Mom," Ava whispered, "what do we do?" I looked at the man at the weapon in his hand, at the faint reflection of light off the stream between us. Behind him, more lights were moving, others closing in. I grabbed Ava's hand. "Run!" We bolted down the creek, splashing water everywhere. Shouts erupted behind us. The woods exploded with noise, boots, radios, the roar of engines. We didn't stop until we reached the old service road, breathless, soaked alive. Ahead through the thinning trees, I saw the faint outline of the hills, and beyond them, the vault. "Mom," Ava said, voice shaking but fierce, "we can't run forever." "No," I said, staring at the rising glow of headlights behind us. But we can finish what your father started. The road climbed toward the hills in long, winding curves. My hands ached from gripping the steering wheel knuckles, white eyes flicking between the headlights and the rearview mirror. No one was behind us yet, but I could feel them closing in. Ava sat beside me, knees drawn to her chest, clutching the small flash drive Mark had left behind as if it were alive. When the last stretch of pavement ended, the old cabin came into view, a lonely silhouette on the ridge. It was smaller than I remembered, weather-beaten, half swallowed by fog. My heart clenched. Mark and I had built this place before Ava was born, back when we still believed life could be ordinary. He'd called it a backup space for his research. I'd thought it was a retreat from work. I should have known it was both. "Is this it?" Ava asked. "Yes," I said, cutting the engine. "This is where he hid everything." We climbed out into the cold air. The wind smelled like pine and metal, sharp and raw. The cabin's front door hung crooked, half open. Inside, it was dark except for the blinking green light on a backup generator. The faint hum of electricity crawled through the floorboards. Ava followed me to the corner where Mark had once kept his servers. The equipment was still there. Dusty towers humming faintly, lights flickering like dying stars. A single monitor sat on the desk black screen waiting. I turned it on. It came to life immediately, no password prompt, just one message in the center. "Access key detected." Ava handed me the flash drive. My fingers shook as I inserted it. The screen brightened, revealing two options in plain text. "Erase all evidence, public release." The cursor blinked between them like a heartbeat. Ava whispered, "What happens if we choose release?" "They'll know exactly where we are," I said, "and they'll come for us. And if you erase it, they win. Everything your father died for disappears." Ava stepped closer. "So, it's the truth or our lives." I looked at her, the same determined spark that Mark used to have when he talked about changing the world. I saw it now in our daughter, and I realized that there was no safe choice left. Safety was the lie we'd been living in. I took a deep breath and clicked public release. The screen flashed red, then white. Lines of encrypted code filled the monitor, scrolling faster than my eyes could follow. "Uploading to global media cloud servers," it read. Estimated time, 2 minutes. The hum of the server deepened louder, vibrating through the floor. Ava flinched as sparks crackled behind the machine. "Mom, something's happening." "I know," I said, pressing my hand over hers. "Don't move." A warning flashed on the screen. "Transmission traced. Signal intercept inbound." I grabbed the keyboard, typing furiously, trying to reroute through old VPN pathways Mark had built. But then a new window appeared, live security feed. A caravan of black vehicles was speeding up the hill, headlights cutting through the fog. "They're coming," I whispered. Ava's voice broke. "We can't stop it now, right?" "No," I said. "That's the point." The upload bar crept to 83%, then 92%. Outside, engines roared closer, gravel scattering under heavy tires. My heart hammered so loudly I could barely hear. The screen flickered again. "Upload complete. Transmission locked." For a moment, everything went silent. The server stopped humming. The monitor dimmed. A faint static buzz hung in the air. Ava exhaled a shaky breath. "Did it work?" "Yes," I said, barely more than a whisper. "It's out. The whole world knows now." Then the first spotlight hit the window. "Get down!" I shouted, pulling Ava to the floor. The glass shattered, raining shards over the desk. Voices shouted outside, orders barked through radios. Someone kicked the door open. Boots thundered across the floorboards. Ava screamed as a man in tactical gear stormed in. I lunged, knocking over the monitor. It crashed to the ground, screen splintering into black. The man aimed a rifle but hesitated when he saw Ava clutching the flash drive. "Don't shoot!" Another voice shouted from outside. "They're alive! The data's gone public." In the chaos, a strange calm washed over me. I looked at Ava, and despite the terror, she was smiling through tears. "You did it," she whispered. "You listened to me." I pulled her close. "No," I said softly. "You saved me." The agents flooded the room, shouting commands I didn't hear. My world had shrunk to the warmth of Ava's hand in mine, the hum of the machines, the faint glow of a screen that had already changed everything. As they dragged us apart, I caught one final glimpse of the monitor, its last message blinking faintly before it died. Data verified. Release broadcast complete. For the first time that day, I wasn't afraid. The truth was free, and there was no taking it back. They came in waves, black uniforms, visors down rifles, raised, shouting orders that blurred together. Hands where we can see them. Step away from the equipment. The air filled with dust and static from the shattered monitors. Someone grabbed my wrist, twisted my arm behind my back, forced me to my knees. Ava screamed my name, but a second agent pulled her away, pinning her against the wall. "Don't hurt her!" I shouted, struggling, but the man behind me pressed the muzzle of his gun against my shoulder blade. "Stay down, ma'am," he said, voice mechanical through his mask. "You've compromised a federal operation." Compromised. The word hit harder than the cold metal biting into my wrists as they cuffed me. I lifted my head just long enough to see the main screen flickering on the floor. It was still glowing faint, but alive. One of the agents kicked it over and spoke into his comms, confirmed transmission complete. "The leak's gone global." Ava looked at me, eyes red, her cheeks streaked with tears. "Mom, they can't take you." "I'm okay," I lied, but my voice cracked. Two men dragged me toward the door while another group began scanning the equipment, shouting codes I didn't understand. Outside, the night had turned bright searchlights, drones hovering above wind from helicopter blades whipping the trees. "Asset secured," someone said into a radio. I twisted my neck, searching for Ava. "Where are you taking my daughter?" "Protective custody," the officer beside me said flatly. I wanted to believe that, but the look in his eyes said otherwise. They shoved me into the back of a van, slammed the door, and the darkness closed around me. I could still hear Ava's voice outside, calling my name until the sound was swallowed by the roar of rotors. Then silence. My pulse thundered in my ears. My hands were numb, my mouth dry. For a long time, no one spoke. Then, a low voice from the front seat said, "She did it. Every news outlet in the country has the file." Another voice replied, "Then the narrative changes. We'll make her the face of it, a domestic leak insider threat. People believe what they're told." I shut my eyes. They were already rewriting me. The van jolted forward, bouncing down the rough road. I tried to count the turns, the distance, anything to map where they were taking me, but fatigue pressed against my skull. Through the small slit in the back window, I saw flashes of light on the horizon, red, blue, and gold flaring across the night sky. The world was reacting. By the time they stopped, I'd lost all sense of time. The doors opened, and two agents pulled me out into the glare of a floodlight. We stood in front of a white transport plane parked on an isolated runway. "Where are we?" I demanded, my voice barely audible. No one answered. One of them pushed a black hood over my head. The smell of fabric and sweat filled my lungs. But as they guided me forward, someone's voice, different, distant, came through a radio headset nearby. "Copy that. Confirmed civilian upload. Multiple governments requesting emergency summit. Public disclosure underway." The agent holding me paused for a second, muttering something under his breath. Then he said quietly, almost to himself, "It's over. She really did it." He tightened his grip again. "Move." Inside the plane, the air was freezing. Metal walls, faint vibration from the engines warming up. They sat me down, cuffed to the seat, and for the first time since dawn, I felt a strange kind of peace. Not safety, but certainty. Somewhere out there, Ava was alive. Somewhere, the truth was already spreading faster than they could contain. Through the fabric of the hood, I whispered to myself, "Mark, it's done." And for a heartbeat, I could almost hear his voice again. Steady, proud, the way it sounded in the recordings. "You did what they never expected, Lena. You told the truth." The plane's engines roared. We lifted into the dark. It's been 30 days since that night, the night the world learned who we really were, or at least what they thought we were. I still don't know exactly where they're holding me. The walls are white, the lights never turn off, and no one calls me by my name. Just the subject. Sometimes I hear voices through the vents, agents arguing about jurisdiction, about leaks, about truth. They think I can't hear, but I always listen. I haven't seen Ava since they took us from the cabin. They said she's safe. They won't say where. At first I screamed, begged, threatened, but silence became their weapon, so I stopped asking. I learned that quiet can be sharper than rage. Every morning they bring me news summaries printed on thin paper, government statements, corporate denials, emergency broadcasts. Argentec collapses under scandal. Global investigation launched. My name appears in headlines beside words like traitor, whistleblower, terrorist. But somewhere between the lies, there are threads of truth. Independent scientists confirm Project Helix was real. The leaked data shows years of experimentation, unauthorized trials, genetic manipulation. And buried deep in those reports, my husband's name, Mark Brooks, deceased lead geneticist. They call him a criminal. I call him brave. Sometimes when the guards think I'm asleep, I hear them whisper, "Her kid's still out there," one says. "They'll find her soon." The other replies, "If she's smart, they won't." I close my eyes and imagine Ava somewhere safe. Maybe with my sister in Oregon, maybe under a new name, pretending to be someone ordinary. I like to think she's free. But a mother's heart always knows when her child is still running. The night before last, something changed. A man in a gray suit came into my cell. No badge, no name. He didn't look like the others. He sat across from me, hands folded calm. "Mrs. Brooks," he said, "you can make this easier for both of us." How I asked. "Tell us where she is." "I don't know," I said, and it was almost true. He studied me for a long time. "The public thinks you're a hero," he said. "But they'll move on. They always do. And when they do, you'll still be here forgotten." He stood, smoothed his tie, and added quietly, "Your husband thought he could change the system from the inside. You can't. The only thing you can change now is how long your daughter stays alive." Then he left. I didn't sleep that night. His words coiled around my ribs like wire. But somewhere between the guilt and the exhaustion, I found something unexpected resolve. This morning, a guard slipped an envelope under my door. No name. Inside was a single photograph Ava, sitting on a park bench, hair shorter, eyes steady, a faint smile. On the back, written in pencil, 4 words. "She's safe, for now." My hands trembled so violently the picture almost tore. I pressed it against my chest and whispered a prayer I didn't believe in. Later, when the lights dimmed for evening, an illusion of night, I heard footsteps outside, softer than usual. A whisper through the slot of my door transmission received, "Check your father's code." Then silence again. I waited until the hallway was quiet. They'd left the last news printout on the floor. I scanned the text, searching for hidden patterns the way Mark used to hide messages inside code strings. And there it was, every 12th letter in the first paragraph spelled a phrase, coordinates confirmed. NW Sector Safe House. I folded the page and hid it under my mattress. If they think I'm broken, they're wrong. Mark taught me to read the truth between lies to see patterns in chaos. He always said data never dies, it just changes form. Maybe that's what we are now, living data, proof they can't erase. I don't know how long I'll be here, but I know what comes next. They can call me a traitor, a threat, a myth. It doesn't matter. The truth is already out there, living in every copy of those files, every shared report, every headline. And somewhere out there, my daughter carries the part of me that they'll never touch. Maybe one day she'll find her way back to me. Or maybe she'll never need to. Maybe she'll become something more than what they made us. Something free, something untamed. If she ever reads this, I hope she knows I stayed silent not out of fear, but to buy her time. Tomorrow they'll come again. They'll ask the same questions. I'll give them the same answers. But tonight, for the first time in weeks, I'm not afraid. I sit on the cold floor back against the wall, the photograph clutched in my hand. "Dad was right," I whisper. "They can't cage what was born to evolve." Outside, alarms blare in the distance, short, sharp bursts. Maybe drills, maybe something more. I smile in the dark, because whether they know it or not, the story isn't over. It's just changing hands. And somewhere under a different sky, a 14-year-old girl named Ava Brooks is learning how to run, how to hide, and how to keep the truth alive. If she's anything like me, she won't stop.